Hello, I am Sonia Madison,
And I'm Jonathan Mason.
and welcome to Law Unfiltered, where we talk about current events and some of the legal issues underlying them. Recently, Donald Trump has been in the news for so many things, but most recently, his treatment of women, and particularly this tape that leaked that was appeared on NBC, where he is talking about groping and he used the P word, grabbing a woman's in the wrong or inappropriate place. And Billy Bush is overheard or at least overseen laughing and kind of instigating or encouraging Donald Trump. And so naturally, of course, at the debates, we get on Donald Trump for what he's done, but NBC has kind of shyly suspended Billy Bush, and now we're at the point where he may be terminated. So, what do you think? I do think that they need to do something, but do you think it rises to the level of termination, particularly given that this was 2005?
Okay. I'm going to answer it in two ways.
Okay, and be careful. I'm just kidding.
In and of itself, I think just the action, I could see how someone would say he shouldn't be fired because it was a long time ago and he was on an entertainment type of show. He's, not necessarily a journalist. And don't get me wrong, I'm not defending anything that was said. But the reality is where he is now, the show he's on is Today's Show. It's, I don't even know how long the Today Show has been on the air, but, it's held to a certain level of esteem. It's a very prestigious show to be on. It's a very competitive market, which may be the driving force. There's GMA and other morning shows that people can turn to, that guests can appear on. So, and then you've got friction potentially with female coworkers who, I would look at them kind of crazy if he came back into the set. So, in a way, I feel like NBC probably didn't or doesn't have much choice. I guess it's just a matter of how they're going to work it out in terms of, are they going to try to dismiss him for cause, or are they going to have to pay him out for his contract or come to a settlement? So I guess those are the kind of details that they're trying to work
would you
out.
even consider that for cause, though?
I don't know. I would think employers can probably, without knowing his contract in general,
and assuming there's a morality clause, because I'm sure
there's a morality clause, but I wonder if it even would apply to conduct that was, so long ago, unless they make you warrant and represent. They could make you warrant and represent that there's no smoke. I don't know how you would even phrase that, but there's no issue out there that could come back to cause embarrassment on the company or something. It gives me an idea for the next contract I write is to come up with some kind of a catch-all clause where, like, if something comes out of the woodwork that causes embarrassment to us, even if it's from the past, then we would have the right to terminate you or something like that. Who knows if an agent, would go along with a clause like that, and how that would all work. But when I think about it, probably not, because it seems like it'd be easy for them to just invoke a termination for cause and just be done with it and not have to pay him. So I think, I have to assume it's more complicated than that.
Well, because he's going to argue that there is no cause. I can imagine from his perspective, he's saying, listen, this happened in 2005 while I was on your show, so you knew about it. This is your footage. You didn't do anything at that time.
Well, he was on Access.
But it was still part of the NBC family. Like, he's been with NBC, or at least been under this contract for, I want to say, 13 plus years. So I'm sure that's one thing. And when you were talking, I'm thinking, well, is there an option to put you on another show that isn't as highly favored as the Today Show? But
I don't think that's realistic.
You don't think that's because they were doing that with when we talked about Fox and Andrea Tantaros. One of the things she was saying was, you guys kept putting me on less shows. You started me off here, but then next thing you know, you put me on these shows that didn't have the audience, or at least the numbers that the other shows did. But I'd imagine, to me, if I was the lawyer for NBC, I'm not going to argue with the act. I'm going to argue the consequences of it. I mean, if we have celebrities that are refusing to talk to you or to do interviews with you, then that's impacting our dollar.
Right.
I mean, that to me, it's more of a cause than you've made this comment. Particularly if we knew you made the comment and we didn't do anything at that time, then it's a matter of the effects or the consequences of that comment. But to me, it doesn't look good for NBC that he did this over several years ago and you didn't do anything. It is like, did you have a different perception of women now? I mean, why was there nothing wrong at that time?
Well, in articles I was reading earlier, I don't remember if it was New York Times or a Hollywood Reporter, some of the executives who are involved in this now are claiming they didn't know anything about it until it came out last week.
Which then it's like, well, why didn't you? It was on tape. I mean, are you not watching?
Well, but it wasn't.
But
it wasn't something that was. It wasn't something that was aired. I mean, so it's just B-roll footage, and I'm sure these executives.
But I've also heard
that.
But I'm saying that doesn't look good. I mean, to say, well, I didn't know. Okay, well, this is your show. I mean, you need to know what's going on in your show. But I have also heard that he's been, I don't want to say a jerk, but a lot of people didn't like him beforehand. And I'm sure he hates this, but he is related to George, H.W. Bush. And so a lot of people already felt like you're only here for nepotism or for this reason. And then, whatever you think about the Bushes, I'm sure some people do equate that with entitlement type mentality. And so, from my understanding, he did an interview with J-Lo. She hasn't been a fan of his since. And other interviews where he does just come off as, I guess, very bash or, not professional in the sense. But again, they've let it pass for whatever reason.
Yeah. Well, one thing I would take from this, and this
as the employer, as Billy Bush,
as Billy Bush, is, and this doesn't only apply in a media situation. I think it's any situation. I'm like, if you're any kind of elected official, executive in a large corporation, or really it should be anyone, but especially somebody in a position where you're in a high profile position, you cannot participate in this type of conduct. Right. I mean, you have to shut it down. You have to, you have to say, you know what, this is making me uncomfortable. I don't want to participate in this conversation because of something like this. I mean, and I think, even if you had remained more neutral in it, and while Trump was making these comments, or even been more like asking journalistic type of questions,
or
but
he
was
said,
like,
"Wow, I can't believe you said that," and then walked off.
Right. But he was like egging it. He was like, I mean, I'm not going to say it was locker room talk, but he was just kind of like, this is a total aside, but when I worked at the law firm where I worked, when I was at the law firm, I had a friend who was a little younger than me, and he was much wilder than me in social life.
Of course.
And every weekend, I mean, on Monday, I used to look so forward to Mondays, because he would always have the craziest stories about, he went out to this place and he met this person and this happened and all that. And it was, I have to say,
you were entertained.
I was entertained and I wanted to hear the stories and I used to listen to it. But I could tell, and in fact, he is in a very high profile position now. But I just imagine, like, if I had recorded any of those conversations and came out of the woodworks with those now, he could potentially lose his job because of those comments that he made back then. So I think, and I'm thinking back to myself, and like, I guess I'm putting myself in Billy Bush's position, and I have to say, maybe I was guilty of the same thing that he was doing in the video.
Well, I mean,
but
if he was talking about grabbing people or sexual assault, hopefully you weren't laughing at that part. I can understand if he's just talking about, partying and some shenanigans, but as long as it's not invading anyone's rights.
Or no,
You know,
yeah. I mean, I don't think anything rose to criminal activity or potential criminal activity. So yeah, I mean, that's a good point. But still, even if it didn't, it would be extremely embarrassing, or potentially, the type of revelation that could cost him his job
right.
with where he is now.
Which would be interesting because I imagine they're probably going through negotiations now. If the contract, either they're going to buy him out or, like you said, argue the cause. But it is interesting from his point, if he's really going to argue, hey, there was nothing wrong with me engaging this, celebrity host or celebrity guest that was, on the show, because then in my mind, if I'm the employer, I'm thinking, okay, well, you would do this again, and
Right.
we'd be back in this situation. You got to realize you did something wrong, and if you don't, then I mean that could be problematic as well.
But I will say one thing, that his apology was
Sincere.
more of an apology than the other person involved in the conversation. But obviously didn't say, and it's interesting too, because initially they were saying that he was going to be on the air the Monday after and he was going to make a statement about it. Well, obviously
Right.
that didn't happen,
Right.
and that's probably never going to
Well,
happen.
it's also interesting how this all came up. I mean, he's bragging at the Olympics about this taped, conversation, and then of course someone goes out and finds it. So it's almost like you brought your own demise here, because I guess you didn't see the wrong in it when you were bragging about it, and so now here we are.
Yeah. and I don't know what he said about it. If he just said, I'm on tape with Trump. He said some crazy things, or or who he said it to. But clearly, it didn't end well.
Right,
it's not ending well. Although, who knows?
For either, I mean, it really hurt Trump as well.
Well,
You don't think so?
Trump is now he's just kind of like in this, I want to say, a downward spiral where he's just not, he's taking no prisoners. It's like anything is fair game. He's like, okay, you want to come out? Because now women, like there was a journalist from People Magazine who just came out. So, he wanted to, he had these women who accused President Clinton of
right before the debate.
Right.
Yeah.
And so now they're beginning to come out against him, because one of the things he said in the debate was, I talked about this locker room talk, but I never did any of this. And now people are beginning to come out who say, no, you did do some of this.
Which I do want to, the next topic, I think we should talk about whether or not that's relevant. Because, a lot of people are arguing Bill Clinton's not the one running, but then some people are arguing, hey, she condoned the act. But, I mean that could be a whole nother topic.
Yeah,
We'll have to talk about that later. But for this one, I guess we'll just have to see how Billy Bush plays this out. I mean, my prediction, they're going to buy him out. But
yeah, I think so. And he'll probably end up back on
his feet.
On
We
his
are a
feet
forgiving
somewhere.
country.
But it may take a little time, but but like you said, we're a forgiving country, and I think it all depends on how you respond to it, and whether you're contrite. I mean, even President Clinton. I mean, he went through impeachment or and everything, but he had to own up to it, and I mean, he wasn't defiant like Trump was just so.
He just owned up to having an affair. I don't think he owned up to assaulting.
I mean,
anyone.
eventually. I mean, when you're asking people for forgiveness, I mean, you might say, well, you didn't have any choice, but you always have a choice. I mean, even when you're quote unquote defeated, even though he wasn't actually, he didn't.
He didn't rape anyone, because Donald Trump is arguing that he raped girls. Well, I mean, obviously Bill Clinton is not saying I did that.
Well, no, it's not.
But he did have to own up to committing adultery and lying about it.
But I mean, really, if every politician,
I'm with you. I mean, I'm sure several presidents.
I'm sure that's why a lot of them haven't gone after him about it, because they're like, oh well, I can't throw stones. But like you said, it'll be interesting to see how this is resolved with Billy Bush and not being on the Today Show any longer is almost certainly the outcome.
Right.
but you just got to be careful out there. And
Make this a lesson to,
yeah, it's got to be a
the
lesson.
people,
you just, when
you really have to live out the values that you want people to think you have. Whether you believe it or not, you really do have to live out these values because everything is almost transparent now.
Yeah, exactly. And there is no, there is no privacy anymore.
Right.
So whenever you think something is a private conversation, you just never know.
Someone's holding on to it for another 7 or 8 years, and then bam.
Exactly.
So, well, tell us
All right.
what you guys think,
All right.
and thanks for listening.
All right, we'll see you next time.